Darker Still by T.S. Worthington. Narrated by Munro. Chapter 1. Home Sweet Home. John Anderson pulled up in front of the crime scene about 10:30 in the morning. He groaned as he switched off the ignition and willed his body to exit the car. As he stood up, his staggering hangover reared its ugly head and sent bolts of pain shooting through his skull. This was followed by wave after wave of dizziness and nausea. He found it difficult to even stand up at the moment, but he had to fake it anyway. The crime scene was already polluted with cops, forensics guys, and reporters. It was actually starting to remind him of Columbus, and he was wondering why he had left the big city to become a detective in a small town like Belpre. This was supposed to be the sort of place where nothing ever really happened, least of all a brutal murder that would make Jeffrey Dahmer squeamish. He had been awakened by the call about 30 minutes before. Last night had ended the same way most of his nights did, with him drinking about a fifth of bourbon and passing out in his recliner, watching crime shows on Netflix. It was a routine that he had grown quite fond of, and he hardly ever deviated from these days. He wished he'd had time to drink more this morning. It might have helped the brutal hangover that he was dealing with. He never used to get hangovers, but he guessed his body was finally fighting back against the copious amounts of booze that he consumed regularly. Of course, he had a lot of demons to drown, and he'd barely scratched the surface. He had rolled out of bed, grabbed a clean shirt, splashed water on his face and his hair to slick it back. He brushed his teeth, grabbed a cup of coffee from his coffee pot. Had to love those timers, and a few squirts of cologne before he headed out the door. The chief had warned him on the phone that the crime scene was going to be brutal, but he was still not prepared for what he saw as he entered the modest ranch-style house on that clear summer day. The smell greeted him first. It was the smell of death that you could never get used to, but you damn sure never forgot either. He was glad he had not eaten any breakfast, because touchy stomach full of the sauce and the smell of death were not a good combo. The victim was a young woman about 20 years old. Her eye...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?